Hello and welcome to World Talks. I'm Diana Skaya. This evening we focus on the region of the Balkans. Now, the Balkans have erupted with protest where massive crowds have taken to the streets of Belgrade to go against President Aleksandar Vučić, while Romania has seen similar unrest fueled by political tensions and growing frustration over the government. And joining me now to break it all down is Maria Simeonova, Research Fellow at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs. Maria, thank you so much for being with us here on TVP World this evening.
Thank you for having me. Just one remark. European Council on Foreign Relations, Sofia office.
So let's take it from Serbia here. Now, what we saw yesterday, and actually one of our correspondents is there on site as well. I mean, Serbs took to the streets in Belgrade. Take us through that. I mean, how is this actually reflecting the broader discontent of the region? I mean, this is happening everywhere. We're seeing this in Romania, in Hungary, in Serbia. It's quite spectacular seeing these images, actually.
Yes, indeed, it was a very, for some, inspiring weekend that we've been through. Especially yesterday, there was the biggest kind of demonstration and protest in the history of Serbia. The streets of Belgrade were full of people, mostly students, who've been protesting for around 4 months now. So we are seeing that our region, Central and Southeastern Europe, there are some processes emerging, some processes boiling. Some of them are related to geopolitical shifts and are the kind of the response to geopolitical shifts. But others, like in the case of Serbia, are mostly linked to the quality of the democracy in the country. So what we saw yesterday in the capital of Serbia was very impressive. Some estimates are saying that there were a little over than 100,000 people on the streets. Other estimates are saying that people were around 300,000. But either way, what we saw was unity of a big part of the Serbian society. The protests were taking place in the biggest Serbian cities in the past 4 months, as I said, and they were provoked by the accident that happened at the railway station in the northern city of Novi Sad, which revealed loopholes in the governance of the country and revealed mismanagement of public funds, and 15 people lost their lives, and the Serbian society is now on the streets demanding accountability.
Let me ask you this. I mean, President Vucic says that the protesters are not going to be able to remove him. What do you think?
Actually, President Vucic, since November last year, took some steps in order to address some of the demands of the protesters. As I said, this all started as a response to the incident where 15 people lost their lives. And first they started with demands for accountability, for prosecuting those that were responsible for the tragedy, and also revealing all documents that were related to the collapse of the roof of the railway station. And back then, 3-4 months ago, the Prime Minister of Serbia resigned, Mr. Vucic resigned. Some charges were raised against some of the responsible people. But nevertheless, the government stays, and the reaction that we saw yesterday doesn't really speak of any intention of President Vucic to resign or whatsoever. So there are a few directions that the Serbian society can take. One would be snap elections, and this will not be a novelty. President Vucic has been calling from time to time snap elections, but there is another opportunity to have a transitional government, but that government to include also representatives not only from the party of President Vucic, but also to expand further into the political spectrum.
Let me ask you this. I mean, if he were to be toppled, and you mentioned a scenario right now of possible snap elections, who could step in his role as to become Serbia's next leader?
This is a very difficult question, and here we should definitely address the state of the Serbian opposition that, if I can say, hasn't been so united, and we clearly saw that during last year's elections. So even if snap elections take place, one thing should be mentioned, and this is, as I said in the beginning, the quality of the democracy in Serbia. We know that Serbia is a candidate EU country, and as such, it has to apply to certain standards like rule of law, good governance, media freedom, and we are seeing that in Serbia, especially. The media freedom is struggling. We know that the president and the government has a very big influence over the media environment in Serbia. So inevitably, any elections in the country are basically influenced by the public debate, which is very much driven by the ruling government. So, but I think the more important thing here is the nature of the protests that we are seeing. We are not seeing EU flags in the protests. I think this comes to say that those young people coming by their bikes to the capital from throughout the country, they're requiring something else. They want not just accountability for what happened in the end of last year. They want the democracy to improve. They want high standards and good governance for them.
Speaking of, I mean, you just mentioned that democracy to improve. Tell us, Maria, what is the current state of Serbia's EU accession process?
Well, Serbia's succession process has been defined, if I can say, by the fact that Serbia's been picking and choosing. So what I mean here is that Serbia has been advancing very slowly in opening, closing chapters of the negotiation process, and especially because of problems that were identified by the EU and the Commission in terms of quality of democracy, but also some examples of democratic backsliding. But being a candidate EU country also means aligning with EU's common foreign and security policy. And since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion in Ukraine in 2022, we saw that President Vucic has been hesitant to align with the EU, specifically sanctions against Russia. And this is something very typical for Serbia, that it has been being siding with Russia, with the EU on specific issues, China in terms of big infrastructure process and so on, which puts significant doubt on whether the current government in Serbia is dedicated to real advancement in its EU accession process.
Let me shift you off now a little bit here to Romania. Now, of course, the battle for, the presidency, Romanian presidency, is definitely heating up. And of course, Russia's involvement in Romania's elections has raised, of course, concerns about foreign influence. Now, what should we take of the entire situation that's taking place now in Romania?
Yeah, actually, this is the right question we should be asking, just to try to draw a conclusion from all those difficult actions that were taken by the Romanian authorities that started again in the end of last year, when the Constitutional Court announced the results of the first round of the presidential elections, which were won by, until then, very unpopular figure, Călin Georgescu, who is a very prominent critic of the EU and NATO. He's opposing the support for Ukraine, so very openly criticizing the EU's policies and so on. So the Constitutional Court, based on a report of the intelligence services of Romania, decided to annul the elections, and now the next presidential elections the rerun actually will take place on 4th of May. But in the meantime, Georgescu was basically refused to take part in the rerun on 4th of May. This happened in the past days, but also another far-right candidate for the presidency was also deprived of the opportunity to rerun at the presidential election in May. So what we can draw as a conclusion is that throughout the whole region, again, returning to the beginning of our conversation, it seems that third parties, malign actors, are using the election process as a way to penetrate, as a way to influence the public debate and hence the result of elections. And if we put that in a regional perspective, and you mentioned what has been happening in Hungary, yesterday there were also a lot of people on the streets of Budapest that were protesting against the actions, the actions of Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and more specifically, he openly embracing the narratives that are coming from across the ocean, from the administration of Donald Trump. There will be elections in the Czech Republic, and there were already reports and warnings that there might be attempts for influencing the election process. So I think we should be paying more attention to what's happening in our region, because if we put it in the framework of the EU's efforts to come up with sustainable solutions about the future of the European security architecture, our countries in Central and Eastern Europe will play a crucial role. Those are countries on the front line. And if Europe is weak, if NATO's eastern flank is weak, this will make Russia's efforts to destabilize Europe, much more easy to fly. So it is very important to
Thank
be
you so much,
noticing.
Maria Simeonova. That's all the time we have for now. Thank you so much for all your insights and expertise, and for being with us here on World Talks this evening.
Thank you for having me.
And that completes this edition of World Talks. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching.